Get started. Good morning. My name is Linda Perkins, and I'm the Director of Applied Women's Studies and Associate University Professor. And I am so excited to welcome you all to our 15th anniversary celebration, the next wave affecting change through applied women's studies. I'm not going to say much now. I'm just going to introduce a couple of people who will give welcome our provost, Jacob Adams, who will be followed by our Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities, Dr. Tammy Scheiber, who's Professor of Religion. And then I'll come back and introduce Dr. Jean Schrodel. Well, actually, let me do it on that. Then I have to come back. It's just, so I have to keep running back and forth. Is that okay? Dr. Schrodel is going to provide a brief history of the Applied Women's Studies program. She was the first director and also the primary person who constructed the program. I just went through the files and I'm just in awe of how much work she put together to write a proposal, a grant, to get this started, which she'll say more about. She's a professor in the Department of Politics and Policy with her area of specialization in policy making at the national level, religion and politics, women in politics. And a book in 2001 is The Fetus of Person, a comparison of politics across the 50 states. And she'll say more. She's currently involved in a project working with Native American voting rights litigation and working on a local project studying the impact of community garden on at-risk youth. So we'll start with Provost Jacob Adams, followed by Dean Schneider. Up there. Followed by.
Thank you, Linda. See, adapting on the fly is the hallmark of every successful person. On behalf of the university, it's my pleasure to welcome everybody to this 15th anniversary celebration for Applied Women's Studies at Claremont Graduate University. Linda introduced me as the provost, and the most frequent reaction I get to that is, what's a provost? It sounds kind of important, but it could be a Dr. Seuss character too. We're not sure at times. The short answer is it's the chief academic officer for the university. And in that role, I am often called on to work with trustees about the development of new academic programming at the university. And the first question they always ask me is, why do we need this program? And I can just imagine how the conversation might go today if we were trying to get Applied Women's Studies approved. Why do we need this program? Why do we need a program that uses knowledge in women's issues as a vital force for change in today's world? Anybody following the presidential election? Where the standard bearer for a major political party talks about sexual assault in terms of gamesmanship, and the highest elected member of that party, the one responding to the candidate, the supposed good guy here, is talking about championing and revering women and voting for the Let Women Die bill. I think with the trustees today, we can make a pretty good argument that more knowledge about women and gender and more advocacy that allows everyone to live to their fullest potential is probably a good thing. The second question they asked me is, does the program fit in CGU? And one of the ways we answer that question is to think back on the things the way we do our work, the things that cause us to be a little different from everybody else doing these things. So we're very student-focused at CGU. We allow students to customize their curriculum. We work across disciplinary boundaries, and we apply what we learn. And Applied Women's Studies is all of those things. But the last one is particularly important, I think, because one of the things we do in the academy when we learn, when we collect data, when we develop theories that explain the way the world operates, no matter what theory we're talking about, political or social or feminist, we always risk keeping it to ourselves, talking to ourselves, working only with ourselves. And we lose sight of the fact that theories may inform us about the world, but application actually transforms it. Applied Women's Studies has a rich history in this regard with the internship programs that place our students in local, national, and international organizations and have them work in education, legal advocacy, women's centers, performing arts centers, prisons, shelters, all kinds of placements. So it's our students and interns and graduates, and you're going to hear from them later, that move beyond classroom walls and actually transform the world in ways that make it a better place. The third question they always ask is, will this program have a future? And I've noted that the National Women's Studies Association got its start in part, so it claims, by asking the question, where are the women? And I think no matter how we have answered that question in the past, in 2016 we're going to have a new answer, because there's going to be a woman running the White House of the United States of America. That's a good thing, but here's a caution too. As we learned when Barack Obama was elected president, we didn't suddenly become a post-racial society. And as we have already seen in this election, issues of equality and empowerment, identity, discrimination, violence, health, none of those things are going to go away, and there's already a backlash that we see rising around different parts of the country. So the need to use knowledge in women's issues as a vital force for change in the world is not going to go away. And as we celebrate in our 15 years of applied women's studies at Claremont Graduate University, I think we need to look ahead to the next 15 years and to the work that the next generation of students and graduates is going to do to keep promoting this agenda. So again, on behalf of the university, welcome, have a great day. This is a terrific program planned. Enjoy it. Thank you.
And welcome. I'm Tammy Schneider, and I'm the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities. And the reason that I'm speaking to you today is that the Applied Women's Studies program actually lives in the School of Arts and Humanities. And we are proud and happy to have it live there, even though it is a transdisciplinary program that reaches out into all of the schools. But for reasons that Jean may remember, may recount, and is going to talk about, we took it and are happy to have it and happy to share. So it is also my honor to welcome you here. This is a big deal because of where we have been and where we hope to go. I am completing my 23rd year at CGU. I usually cough over the number, but it is relevant for today since we are celebrating the 15th anniversary of this program. Yes, I was here for 8 years before we had this program. See, I can do math even though I'm in humanities. I know Jean is going to, is giving a history of the program, but there are a few data points that struck me when thinking about today. When I started at CGU, you could be fired, women could be fired for wearing pants to work in the state of California. When I arrived at CGU, there were fewer than 10 women in tenure-track positions. Shortly after beginning at CGU, we learned that we were the most egregious university in gender inequity and salary at any Title I research university in the United States. I was here for a very long time before there were any women in the senior leadership at the university. The women of CGU became a bit tired of the above scenario, and much has changed. Data points of change include, we conducted a salary review last year and found out that there were a few men who were underpaid, but no women. Out of the 4 vice presidents, 2 are women. Oh, there's one. One of our 4 deans is a woman, and she can and does wear pants anytime she chooses. I was going to wear a skirt today too, and then I had to change that. How that happened is a mix of things. One is that the female faculty formed a forum, try saying that 4 times fast, and started taking on the issues inside the university and the academy. We agitated, and now the salaries are in line. We now have an Office of the Ombuds, and we have a faculty parental leave policy, and more. One of the issues we addressed along the way was the fact that women were graduating with degrees in women's studies, but they didn't actually have any skills, which would allow them to get the jobs to foment change, hence the AWS program. Linda Perkins took over AWS 10 years ago. As a result of the changing times and Linda's leadership, AWS has grown as notions of sexuality, what it means to be a parent, a worker, a member of society has changed. The people speaking today, our amazing alumni, will highlight both how far we have come and how far we have to go. So, even though this is from a cigarette commercial and I'm appalled that I remember the song, we've come a long way, baby, to get where we got to today. but we have a long way to go. I am looking forward to hearing where we will go next. Thank you.
I'm going to begin by contradicting something that Tammy just said. I'm sorry, Tammy, I have to do this. Jacob, are you listening?
I'm listening.
Because I was found to still be underpaid in the latest study. So, Tammy, I don't know where you got your data, because I got a letter giving me a raise because of that. Just a little note. All right, and I wasn't going to say that, but when Tammy said that, I had to make that point. You may be able to tell that I'm a little angry. You may feel it. I think a lot of women are angry right now. But I'm going to take you back in a time where I think in some ways we were quieter, but the anger was simmering there. I mean, in a way, it's very surprising that AWS was established 15 years ago at CGU. This was not a time of great feminist upsurge. Second wave feminism had largely run its course. I don't believe in quiescence, but it wasn't a big, hardcore period. Third wave was in its infancy, and we weren't even thinking about anything after third wave. So to a large extent, in my view, is CGU's AWS was a result of a confluence of factors largely specific to this university. First, certain background conditions. There were a small number of tenure track faculty here, as Tammy pointed out, many of whom were identified themselves as feminists, even some who did feminist research. We also had a handful of women on the CGU Board of Trustees who were generally favorable, most notably Marilyn Sutton, Priscilla Fernandez, and Jennifer Diener. But this also was combined with conditions at CGU that Tammy mentioned a little bit. She talked about the salary study, and I'll come to that in a moment, but there were other things. I remember when I went in and requested parental leave, and I was told it wasn't needed. It wasn't needed. CGU didn't need to have parental leave. I was managed to negotiate one class off, but as a result, they upped my administrative and service responsibilities, so I was working harder than I was before I got my one class off. The first person, anybody here know besides maybe Tammy, maybe Jean Whitman-Blumen back there, the first person to finally get parental leave at CGU? Paul Zach, a guy. Well, the guy asked for it, and we had been agitating. He took advantage of the work that the women did. Gosh, excuse me for sounding so unusual. I remember also when my son was a baby that faculty meetings in my department, the time they started and ended shifted to adjust to my male colleagues' tennis games. When I asked for a faculty meeting to start a half hour later, so that my son, I could get him to daycare, they refused. So all of these things were simmering, if you will, as a backdrop. Then, I'm a policy studies person, among other hats that I wear. And one of the things that those of us who study policy is, we talk about trigger events, something that lights everything up. At CGU, we had all the women sort of thought individually that there were so few of us that whatever we were feeling was something specific to our department. And then the salary study hit. The Chronicle of Higher Education identifying us as having the worst gender disparity in salaries of any major university in the country. All of a sudden, we all realized that it wasn't individual issues or individual problems, but there was a systemic issue at play. You can smile, Patricia. She wasn't an administrator then.
parental leave either.
Okay? That brought us together talking in a way that really had never happened before. We used to talk about consciousness raising, maybe you all talk about it still, those of you who are younger, but that happened with us. And one of the things that came up was graduate studies in women's studies, graduate work in women's studies. And I have to give a shout out here to Karen Torgeson. Karen had been the person more than anyone else who kept saying, we need to do this. Okay, good for her. So a group came together with the support of a lot of other women there, but the first steering group included Karen, Lourdes Arguelles, Jean Littman Blumen, Cheryl Granrose, Janet Farrell-Brody, and myself. But I want to make clear, all these other women, including Tammy and Patricia, were part of this general sense and working on change. Now we knew at CGU that we had to cover all of our bases. You could not have one single opportunity, any holes, any glitches, any possible way for someone to discredit a proposed graduate program. We knew there was going to be opposition. I mean, the comments were scathing, Trump-like comments among male colleagues. So we knew we had to develop a program that was both academically, intellectually, and financially viable. I'm going to tell you, today programs at CGU have to go through a very intense process to get approved a new degree. That time, no, but we did it. We did an unprecedented amount of research, work to get this program through. I'll tell you, we did 3 surveys, okay? 1998. We surveyed undergraduate women in introductory women's studies programs at 11 universities and colleges across the country, a good cross-section. We got responses from over 400 women. We asked them, 4-page survey, are you interested at all in a graduate program in women's studies? And almost 60% expressed somewhat or very strong interest in such a program. Well, that's pretty good. Then we went on and asked questions about what type of a specific program they were most interested in. And what we found out was they said to us, we used the word applied, and that resonated. And we defined applied as a program having real-world policy implications. It was the most strongly supported item of different kinds of programs that we put out. So that said to us that there's a potential student market out there. Then we sent out surveys to all of the programs, littler groupings, whatever you want to call it, of graduate studies and any form of women's studies throughout the country to see what kind of programs were out there. Now, most of those turned out to be programs that had a focus on feminist epistemology, feminist theory, and so on. Excuse me, Tammy, those humanities things. I gotta have fun. They're my friends. Some of my best friends are in humanities. But what we argued then, and part of what we put forth, was there was a mismatch. A mismatch between what the students, at least an unmet need among a bunch of prospective students and what was there. And we, of course, could step in, being the heroic people that we all are. Then, our final survey. And I was looking through my notes and I couldn't find the actual numbers. So bear with me. But we sent out a survey, I think it was actually not sent out, we called leaders from business, the nonprofits, and the public sector to assess whether they would be interested in hiring graduates of this program. And it was interesting. There were some troglodytes, but most of them at least were willing to say they were open. So then we said, well, what would you want? And the thing that came back again and again was, we want people with real skills, not just passion. Passion is great, but you need the skills. And then we talked to them about what kind of skills. And then, my friends, we put all of this together, the results of all of these surveys and all of the input in developing the proposed program. Oh, and by the way, wrote a grant to fund it so CGU didn't have to pay the startup costs. Okay? We did I'm sorry. It's like when you talk about Hillary Clinton, that sort of got to watch every step, cover every possible thing because you're going to get shot down if you don't. Okay. I will tell you, nobody, no program before that had ever done anything close to that. In fact, I'm not going to mention the degree. Any of you want to talk to me later, I'll tell you privately. Was another degree that was put forward at exactly the same time, which came out from a couple of males sitting around talking and saying, oh, we'd like to establish X. No background, no work, no nothing. And by the way, CGU gave them a whole pile of money to set their program up. Leave it. Just, excuse me, I'm channeling all of, I think Trump has brought it out. I'm so freaking angry. So I think it is because you see these things and you think, what is it? I just got my Medicare card. God damn it. Yes, I do occasionally, Patricia, swear a little bit appropriately. I'm getting old. I'm not feeling like I should still be having to deal with these kinds of issues, and it's bringing it all back up. So, we did it. We took it to the administration, we took it to the faculty, and they had to approve it. They had no choice. It was so frigging good. It really was. So then, the question became, where do you put this program? Well, initially it was in religion, because Karen Torgerson was there. It really didn't fit there very well. So we had it at that point, as time went on. We had our first female administrator at CGU. A woman named Ann Hart. Ann Hart looked at this and she said, oh, this makes no sense. Why is this applied program with a policy focus in religion? Scratch, scratch, scratch her head with a director from political science. She said, well, I mean, it's obvious. It needs to be moved to the School of Politics and Economics. And I said, no, Ann, this won't work. It won't work, let me tell you. But Ann insisted that it go to the faculty. There was a meeting of the faculty. Do you remember this, Tammy? The SP faculty. Patricia, did you know this? They held a meeting to discuss and vote on it. They scheduled it at a time when I had a parent-teacher conference at my son's grade school. And I said, you know, this really should be at a time when I could come. No. It was voted down unanimously by every one of the men in SPE. Did you know that? Salama, most of those guys are gone, but not all of them. They said, we do not want this low-quality, non-rigorous, non-academic program. We do good, solid, real research. Okay, so I probably 2 years ago would have given a totally different talk. Blame it on Trump. Oh, you better believe it. But let me tell you, the madder and the angrier that we get, you know, this idea is somehow we're all supposed to roll over. No. Women have not rolled over. We have made significant progress at CGU. Are we at where we all want to be? Maybe not entirely. But we've made progress. We do. How's that? Got to get parental leave. What the heck? I think of it a little bit, if you will, and most of you are younger, some aren't. The second wave feminist comment about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, right? That people would say, oh, Fred Astaire is such a great dancer. And feminists would say, yeah, but Ginger Rogers did it well, dancing, going backwards and in heels. It feels like, to me, that's what it's been. I guess I would leave it a little bit like the people before, in the sense you spoke earlier. I cannot think of a time when it is more important that we have a program like AWS. I mean, the things that I heard and saw when I was first at CGU, that I haven't heard and seen the same level of comments for a good number of years, are now all over the airwaves. Yeah? Whether it's the Bros for Bernie, or I love the latest. Anybody seen the Nate Silver study? Know Nate Silver? He does the predictions. He ran a study looking at who would win if only women voted, and it would be overwhelmingly Hillary Clinton. But even more overwhelming the other way if only men were voting. So there's now a move to repeal the 19th Amendment. I don't want to be here 15 years from now talking about this blank again. It's time for it to stop. And it will only stop, though, if we all do what is needed, even if it means dancing backwards and in high heels.